Hello, dear friends. This revelation from a news agency seems very real. Opinion piece. Saved by the skin of our teeth. On the brink of a clash. The world was saved from conflict. It was worse than the missile crisis. False flag to provoke a war. Trump pleaded with Xi Jinping to withdraw his planes. Forces of light ask us to mediate for peace. Kerry Cassidy reveals details of Pelosi's visit to Taiwan. We are now in the end of days, not the end of times. Let's start. To be saved by the skin of one's teeth is a colloquial phrase that refers to someone who has managed to get out of a predicament, difficulty, or complicated or risky situation, or manages to avoid it at the very last moment, almost by a miracle. No one decides to save himself by the skin of his teeth, but it is luck, good fortune, providence, or whatever you want to call it. For it implies that someone avoids or manages to get out of a problematic context or state at the last moment. Remember that God is in control, and there is divine providence. This is exactly what seems to have happened with the China-US crisis over Nancy Pelosi's visit to Taiwan. According to Real Raw News, Donald Trump used his influence to prevent China from starting World War III in retaliation for Pelosi's visit to Taiwan. This would have been another false flag intended to provoke a global conflict, which fortunately failed. According to Michael Baxter, the US came closer to a war on 2nd August than it was since the Cuban Missile Crisis of 1962. As a State Department C-32, which is a modified Boeing 757, carrying Nancy Pelosi headed towards Taiwan's air defense zone. 4 Chinese 5th-generation Chengdu J-20 fighters from Huiyang Air Base rushed to intercept the intruder, which, with orders to destroy the C-32 once a positive visual identification had been made. As the J-20s headed for the Taiwan Strait, US F-35 Lightning seconds from the aircraft carrier USS Ronald Reagan, which had detected the J-20s, went into afterburner hoping to intercept the Chinese fighters before they could launch on the C-32, a provocative act that could have triggered conflict. But in Palm Beach, Florida, Donald Trump entered his Mar-a-Lago war room upon learning that a potential battle was unfolding on the other side of the world. Trump told the staff to put Xi Jinping on the line, and a wary Xi took the call. The US and Chinese fighters were less than a minute away from merging when Trump implored Xi Jinping to stand down his planes. He said he could calm and de-escalate the situation without going to war. Xi Jinping prattled on about how he had wanted that China considered Pelosi a war criminal, but gave him a chance to explain himself and ordered his planes to divert from the combat area, the source said. Trump claimed to have evidence, which he would later give to Xi Jinping, that the person aboard the C-32 was not really Pelosi, but a look-alike, who had been sent in her place. Moreover, he told President Xi that even if the real Pelosi was on board the plane, she had absolutely no authority to negotiate with Taiwan on behalf of the US. In quotes, "This is huge. We have had a lot of disagreements, but let's not turn the world to ashes over one woman trying to pretend she's still important. I will make sure she gets proof that what I say is true." They could be trying to start a war. Let's not let that happen today, he told Xi Jinping. Xi Jinping agreed that the world need not to end because of the arrogance of a few. He ordered his fighters back, and the C-32 carrying Pelosi landed safely in Taipei. Intercontinental ballistic missiles could be flying right now, but they are not. Thanks God. Kerry Cassidy has published an unverified report of details behind Pelosi's visit to Taiwan. The source claims she was invited there by a high-powered military woman named Ma, who died suddenly, so Pelosi left Taiwan quickly without the funds. They say she was offering Pelosi money to come to Taiwan in order to trigger a war. Tension in Taiwan. Pelosi meets with Taiwan's president and reiterates commitment to the island. Taiwan will not back down in the face of escalating military threats. Nancy Pelosi ends a 24-hour trip to Taiwan that has crossed China's red line. Pelosi arrives in South Korea from Taiwan to continue her Asian tour. US faces escalating tensions with China after Pelosi's visit. Trump criticizes Pelosi for her trip to Taiwan. She's always causing trouble, he said. China's military announces live fire drills around Taiwan after Pelosi's arrival. Taiwan asks its ships to avoid areas designated for Chinese military exercises. China increases its production and suspends the import of more than 2,000 foodstuffs from Taiwan. Wall Street rebounds after Pelosi's visit to Taiwan ends. General Berger told his Chinese counterpart, in quotes, "Shoot the plane down if you want. She's a traitor." G7 foreign ministers fear that China's action over Pelosi's visit to Taiwan could lead to escalating tensions and instability. India will take all necessary measures against a Chinese ship going to Sri Lanka. Reset News. Gene Decode says off-planet influence has been removed and only the click players remain. Donald Trump hosted Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orbán at one of his golf courses, just a week after the leader made controversial remarks. Rudy Giuliani is not expected to be charged in New York federal investigation in the Ukraine lobbying case, NBC reports. Rains returned to Kentucky, where flooding has left 37 dead. Rand Paul calls for restrictions on exporting DNA technology to communist China. Many people wonder why the area around Lake Geneva, Switzerland, has not been attacked. There are more than 200 organizations there that issue passports granting immunity from prosecution to people anywhere in the world. Who gave them that right? Tedros is not a doctor and is a member of the Tigray People's Liberation Front, which was declared a terrorist organization by the US government in the 1990s. Crisis. Texas crude oil is up 0.6% to close at $94.42 a barrel. Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Dogecoin lose momentum at the end of July. Amazon braces for the Great Recession and cuts 100,000 jobs. The United Nations urges governments to raise taxes on the energy sector. Germany's Vice-Chancellor Robert Habeck visited Bavaria to urge citizens to accept rising energy costs as price for opposing Russia. The crowd greeted him with boos and shouts of, quote, What have you achieved with sanctions? Go away, traitor and warmonger. Gazprom announces that Western sanctions prevent it from returning the repaired Nord Stream 1 turbine to its place. The device in question was repaired in Canada and is currently in Germany. Biogas, an emergency solution in Germany in the face of the lack of Russian supplies. Bank of America believes Europe's natural gas crisis is going from bad to worse. Europe's gas reserves could run out by winter. Freedom Convoy in Canada, 9/11 September 2022. On Friday, 9th September, a convoy will leave from the east and meet at Manitoba. On the same day, another convoy will leave from the west and meet in Alberta. On the morning of Sunday, September 11th, these two convoys, east and west, will converge at Regina, Saskatchewan. Spain. The Spanish stock market rises 0.56% and regains 8,100 points. The IBEX 35 closes in the green, up half a point, and consolidates its position at 8,100 points. The IBEX 35 escapes the falls of the European stock markets. The Spanish fund industry once again exceeds 300 billion in assets. Discontent in Spain over the controversial energy saving plan, while the government threatens fines. The government announces a transport subsidy for the Balearic and Canary Islands. Europe dries up under a new heat wave that forces water consumption restrictions in Spain. Fifth day of the heat wave in Spain, with thunderstorms and highs above 40 degrees Celsius. Pharmacists warned that 700 medicines can aggravate the effects of the heat by favoring dehydration, affecting kidney function, or reducing sweating. The fires devastate more than 1,000 hectares in Galicia, 470 of them in Berín. The Cañada de los Pájaros in Seville is in danger due to a drought worse than last year. After the Tenerife fire, new orography and ecosystem recovery. The government grants Spanish nationality to the Russian pianist Grigory Sokolov. Thousands of data stolen from the company Globo in Spain are auctioned on the deep internet. Americas. The price of petrol in Puerto Rico falls below the dollar after more than 4 months. Argentina signs multi-million-dollar debt deal with China amid tensions. The Argentine president visits a lithium project of the Chinese mining company Xinjiang. Argentina consults Chile over unauthorized flights detected in its airspace. A definitive halt to work on a section of the Mexican Tren Maya is ordered. López Obrador ordered to open the files of the Navy and the Army on the dirty war. In quotes, "I don't trust you either." Controversial response from Mexico's Interior Minister to the murder of a disappeared woman. After the disagreement, the presidential pre-candidate ordered the woman to be taken care of. Attack on a police substation in Colombia results in one attacker being killed. The future of the Bayou population is uncertain. 39 Bayou children have died of malnutrition this year in Colombia. Bolivia's plan to use oil palm as biodiesel. Dynamiting and gas at the coca growers protest against the parallel market in Bolivia. Ecuador exports its first batch of deforestation-free coffee to Italy. Ecuador's president confirms he will attend Petro's inauguration. Land iguanas are born on Galapagos Island, Ecuador, after almost 2 centuries. Guatemala arrests 4 human traffickers for extradition to the US. 16 arrests per hour, the number of arrests in Bukele's controversial war against gangs. From 27th March to 1st August, 48,494 people have been arrested, classified by the authorities as terrorists. An NGO warns of repression and lack of religious freedom in Cuba. Maduro denounces kidnapping in Argentina and attempted theft of a Venezuelan plane. The Venezuelan president denounced on Wednesday that a model cargo plane that fulfilled important humanitarian functions for Venezuela, Caribbean countries and Africa has been kidnapped for 2 months in Argentina and could be seized by the US. Dominican president complains about the lack of regularization in cryptocurrencies. 188 deaths from gang warfare in Haiti between April and May. Amnesty proposal for those responsible for the prison massacre moves forward in Brazil. Brazilian industrial production accumulates a fall of 2.2% in the first half of the year. Strange holes discovered in the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean. The U.S. National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration's ship Oceanos Explorer has discovered several perfectly aligned holes in the seabed, and their origin is a mystery. Europe. Heat and drought in France. 40 degrees Celsius and water restrictions are expected. The Netherlands officially recognizes water shortages but doesn't apply restrictions. Former German Chancellor Schröder proposes the simplest way out of the energy crisis in Europe. He stressed that the good news is that Moscow wants a negotiated solution. In this respect, he pointed out that the agreement sealed last month in Turkey to evacuate Ukrainian grain was a first success. In quotes, perhaps this can be gradually expanded into a ceasefire, he said. Nothing that both sides will have to make concessions. Ukraine. The United Nations announces a commission of inquiry into the attack on an Ukrainian prison in Elenovka. Ukrainian and Russian representatives signed an agreement on Friday to resume grain exports at a meeting brokered by the United Nations. The first shipment of Ukrainian grain arrives in Turkey. According to P3 sources, what happened was that Western European leaders decided to ignore orders, in quotes, coming from rabbis in New York who believe they are engaged in a holy war against Russia. Zelensky's confession: despite the help, in quotes, we cannot defeat the Russians. We are living through hell. Non-stop Russian bombing. Russian Supreme Court declares the Ukrainian Azov Battalion a terrorist organization. The Russian Defense Ministry talks about biological laboratories and biological weapons that the Russians found in Ukraine. The reason RT News was blocked in many countries is because Russia started to declassify intelligence reports that were collected over the last 22 years. Last week, a secret agreement was reached between the Russian and UK governments to end the war in Ukraine. This is part of a wider settlement agreement that will lead to a complete overhaul of existing international institutions this autumn, say sources in MI6 and the Russian FSB. Millions of children go missing every year. 83,000 every month, 2,700 a day, 115 an hour, 1 every 30 seconds. Asia. The US wants the Taliban that it will be vigilant in preventing them from harboring Al-Qaeda. The US warns its citizens of possible attacks after the death of the leader of Al-Qaeda. Sri Lankan president says the nation faces grave danger and calls for unity in the country. Tension in Nagorno-Karabakh is rekindled. Partial military mobilization and skirmishes. 2 servicemen are killed by Azerbaijan, which reported the loss of 1 soldier. Azerbaijan captures territories in Karabakh in the military operation Revenge. And that's all for today. Thanks a lot, dear friends.